Tonight, I'll be narrating Flamingo by Saturdead. Flamingo seemed to be the collected name for all things related to Chrissie. Even later entries confirmed she was still around, alive, and active. Born in 1976, she's come a long way from the crayon drawing she's made in 1981. They still spoke about her like she was a child, promising toys and gadgets in exchange for cooperation and tests. They never spilled out anything completely. All I learned about Chrissie came from context. The word flamingo, for example. It seemed to come from some kind of digestion issue, keeping her from absorbing the kind of nutrients and vitamins a person needs to live. From the day she was born, she was given this compound 5 mix B as a substitute. Whatever it was, it kept her alive. She'd be dead without it. They would ask her really strange questions, like how well she could see with her eyes closed, or if she could open doors without using her hands, or, in this one instance, if she was still experiencing growing pain in her arms and legs. She gave one click for yes. They seemed to have a good relationship. They'd keep a good tone and even joke around. They sometimes talked about dosage and treatment, but it always had this tune of something pleasant, almost like looking forward to a meal or a spa day. It was something to be excited about. And at the end of every session, they'd give her a snow globe, seemingly for no reason. I think she just liked them. She wanted one from each state. I came back to the office late in the afternoon. Most of the others had already gone home. I'd got an email about Don coming back to work in the morning, and we needed him to get up to date on our progress. I had to do some overtime to write up a summary, or I'd have him tailing me like a lost puppy all week. I kept the lights on and barricaded myself in my makeshift box fort. Apart from the fluorescent lights, it was eerily quiet. I put on the radio just to have some noise in the air. I turned on my desk light and organized my papers, firing up my work computer as I settled in for a long night. I didn't mind. It was paid overtime. I checked out a couple of CDs that I couldn't get to work in the car. More notes, audio snippets, records, and measurements. They never exclusively spelled out what they were measuring, but some of the numbers stood out. 380.2 pounds, 7 feet 9 inches, 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit, too dense to swim. It was about 8 p.m. when I got up to have a coffee. I had my headphones on, listening to an audio recording as the machine sputtered. They were listing things they'd found in Chrissie's room that hadn't been there during their last checkup. For example, she'd gotten a hold of live piranhas, which she kept in an aquarium. They were discussing how the hell she got them to begin with. As I took a sip of coffee, I thought I heard something. Removing my headphones, I listened. I could hear the radio in the other room, but that was it. I called out, "Hello?" There was no response. Thinking I was getting paranoid, I silently crept back to my workstation. There was nothing there, but I could have sworn I'd heard something. I lowered the volume on the radio and turned off my headphones, trying to pinpoint the noise I had heard. It was strange enough just being there after hours. The place was usually littered with people talking over one another or tapping away at their keyboards. Now, it was just me. Just to make sure, I double-checked the lock on the front door. Getting back to my desk, I figured I ought to move the boxes a little. Right now, I was literally boxed off, and I couldn't see anything. Something could be standing right outside the door without me knowing. But as I moved the boxes a little, I got this chill down my neck. I kept thinking about that morning in the motel. I was sure I'd closed those boxes the night before. Something wasn't right. I got back behind my desk and sat down. The moment I touched my keyboard, I heard a noise. The front door that I locked was slowly opening. I was about to look who it was, but something didn't feel right. It wasn't so much the door opening, but the way it opened. There was always that familiar click when you slot the key into it. I hadn't heard that. I suppressed my instinct to call out and instead pulled my feet up off the floor, staying behind the boxes as still as I possibly could. Whoever came in hadn't seen me yet. The steps weren't even. I could hear naked skin slap against the stone floor as someone limped inside. I heard some items getting knocked off desks as whatever was on the other side stumbled through the room. It made this awkward gulping noise, like someone cold started an engine. Finally, it coughed, and the lights went out. There was this cool wave of air rushing past me, sending the hairs on my neck straight up. I watched as the box at the top of my would-be fort was effortlessly picked up. The box weighed at least 45 pounds, but it was taken down like it was nothing. I was so quiet, I forgot to breathe. I could see outlines in the dark. There was this shadow on the floor, showing something tall and gangly. Every now and then, it would make that uncomfortable gulping noise, then proceed to opening another box. It felt like hours, but it was probably just a couple of minutes. It was fast, as if looking for something very specific. It didn't stop to read labels or reports. Then, I got a text message. I think it was just Dawn checking if I had anything to send him to prep for the meeting the next morning, but I'd forgotten to put my phone on mute. This one loud ding echoed through the room, and I heard whatever was on the other side react accordingly. It was such a sudden noise, and it was surprised. It stepped back, getting its foot snagged in one of the power cables. It pulled back too hard, and dragged along my computer screen and keyboard, knocking over the box fort as it went. About a dozen boxes collapsed to the floor. I was quick on my feet. The moment it all came down, I hid under my desk. I pressed my face against the ground. There was a small space between the desk and the tiled floor, giving me almost a full inch to view what was on the other side. I didn't see much. It was dark, and the only light I got were from the light posts outside. But I did get a clear view of this tall silhouette, almost like a stick figure, a far too small head for a far too long neck. No hair, long arms with a strange number of fingers. I couldn't see it breathing. It was completely still. It raised an arm, and I could see it shaking. It poked at one of the empty boxes, then looked closer at the one that tipped over. It picked up something small and held it up, turning it over just inches from its face. Then, something happened. Something flipped like a switch. The radio burst into static, like the frequency shuffled on its own. The kitchen light came on and instantly popped. A flash of light revealed something gray with leather-like skin. I could hear the microwave running as I saw the shoulders on this thing rise and fall, over and over. It dropped whatever it held and tore the boxes apart. Years of documentation and reports thrown to the wind as it flailed its arms around. It stomped down so hard that one of the boxes popped like a balloon, spilling out folders and employee onboarding handbooks. It put one of its legs on top of a desk and pressed down like a vice, breaking the cheap wooden furniture like a snapping twig. As it raged and threw its weight around, sending boxes and desk lamps and screens flying across the room, it accidentally tipped my desk over, revealing me. And it stopped. Now, I can't tell what I was looking at. Not exactly. I don't recall seeing any eyes or a mouth. But there was movement. 100 little movements. Little things twisting and turning in the dark. A strange, circular motion. A hole. I don't know why I figured it would attack me. Some animals stop moving when faced with a predator, as moving might trigger an instinct to chase. That's what it felt like to me. I was curled up on the floor, looking up at something I didn't understand. So when it reached for me, I was ready. I ducked down, feeling two of its fingers brush against the top of my head as I headed for the break room at a full sprint. The radio was going haywire. It had gone from playing a shock jockey to police scanners to static. There was a blip coming from the fridge as the electronics kept failing. I could see a light outside blinking through one of the windows, and I could hear a car alarm going off in the parking lot. The emergency exit sign flickered as I ran towards it. Just as I was about to reach the handle, I took a hard right towards the bathroom. As I did, something slammed into the door behind me. I heard the hinges snap as the door flung open, triggering a deafening alarm. I rushed into a bathroom stall, closed the door, and locked it. I covered my ears and curled up on the toilet, keeping my feet off the floor. Seconds later, I see the latch on the door move up and to the right, and the bathroom door swung open effortlessly. It's just standing there, shielded by the dark. The crescendo of failing electronics reached higher and higher. It tilts its head slightly to the right, and suddenly, it's all quiet. No alarms. Nothing. It looks at me. It doesn't move a muscle. It's staring me down as if looking for something in me. I'm plastered against the back of the stall, trying to make myself as small as possible, my head growing faint from the lack of oxygen. I can't breathe, can't think. Without a sound, an arm reaches for me. Not menacingly, but determined. I say the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know why. "Chrissie," I say. "Chrissie, don't." The arm stops. "I don't have anything," I continue. "I don't have what you're looking for." The arm falls down to its side, long enough to scrape the floor. It makes a clicking noise, once, searching my face for the hint of a lie. I take rapid, shallow breaths. It turns its head to the left, relaxing its shoulders. Then, it turns around and leaves. I watch as it walks out the back door. The moment it passes the threshold, the whole building comes alive. Alarms, radios, microwave, fridge, and every light came back in a wave of impressions that punched my senses dead. I blink as my eyes tear up and I look outside, but there's nothing there. It's just gone, with a faint smell of ozone. I called the police and my boss. The security cameras failed to capture anything. Most of the boxes that had been knocked over were fine, and even the reports seemed to be salvageable. There were only a couple of items that had been broken, a couple of empty test tubes with age-yellowed labels, and what looked like a snow globe. Nothing fancy, just a little souvenir thing with a "Don't Mess with Texas" label. Just bad luck, I suppose. It took us a few days before we got back to the office, leaving me some time to go through the last of the reports. It seemed the last of the Compound 5 mixes had been delivered months ago, and there were no more scheduled deliveries. If this was something Chrissie needed, she was running out. Fast. I tried checking a couple of VHS tapes, but they'd been demagnetized. But more so, I found something I'd been looking for. A shipping address. I didn't go alone. Not only did I bring Dawn, but we brought the police. It was company property after all. The place was registered as part of an industrial warehouse, but it was sectioned off with layers of fences and barbed wire. All the locks were long since rusted shut. We had to cut them open. We followed 2 flights of stairs downward, leading to what looked like an abandoned bomb shelter. It took a lot of effort, but we got the door open. No one had touched it for ages. The entire room was cylinder-shaped with a drain in the floor. There were no lights. We checked the walls with flashlights, sweeping over empty shelves and open drawers. Someone had been there recently, and they'd cleared the place out. I could tell that the place had been packed. There were handwritten labels taped to the walls. Some of them were simple enough. Labels for pictures, clothes, and tools. Then, a label for snow globes. Every single state labeled, but the shelves were empty. Someone had taken everything and just left. Don took a closer look, sweeping over the labels with his flashlight. "It's missing Texas," Don remarked. "How about that?" The place was covered in dust, but a couple of spots were left clear. There'd been collections there until recently. On the far end of the wall, there were test tubes and turkey basters. Labels of C5MB meticulously dated, going back at least a decade. It had stopped a couple of months prior. The officers left as soon as the coast was clear. While Dawn did some long overdue paperwork, I sat in my car and blasted the AC. I thought about the name Flamingo. The flamingo gets its pink color from the shrimp it eats. It's a result of its diet and environment. Chrissie had never managed to digest the things we take for granted. She grew up on a completely different set of vitamins and minerals, something they'd made up in a lab back in the 70s. Then again, if they hadn't, she probably wouldn't have survived infancy. But what features of ours are inherently human? What is the human equivalent of the flamingo's pink feathers? What had Chrissie sidestepped, and what had she gained in turn? I couldn't make sense of it. Instead, I turned on the radio. Maybe the shock jockeys could drown out my thoughts for a bit. There was no music. All the local channels were reporting the same thing. They'd found the missing 10-year-old girl. They dubbed the rescue an act of vigilante justice. A deceased suspect was found on the premise, apparently killed in a brutal fashion. The girl had been released from a locked basement and reunited with her family. She had initially been taken on her way to show and tell, where she was going to show off a souvenir from a recent trip down south. An unknown vigilante had broken into the house where she was kept. In one soundbite they got from the girl, she spoke in a Texas accent. When asked to describe her rescuer, she only had this to say:
"That thing stole my snow globe."
We finished our liquidation of the company and closed another case. Most of the boxes were filed away or destroyed, throwing away decades of documentation down the shredders. I never got a clear view of Chrissie, and there were no answers as to what became of her. There was no recipe for the compound. Maybe she figured it out. I guess she had to, or else she'd have starved to death. When people ask me about my craziest work story, this is the one I want to tell. I don't know what to make of it, and the people with all the real answers are long since gone. It's so much easier to tell stories about creepy old men than trying to explain the flamingo, but I can honestly say I think about it every day. I can't help but wonder, if we are stripped of the building blocks that make us what we are meant to be, what remains? Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.